Hi everybody, in this week's free training video, I'm answering the question, are there certain things that you shouldn't outsource to a VA? Now, I'll say that I'm here finally back in my home office for the time being as we're preparing to move after 2 weeks of being on the road. And before that, a week before I actually left to go on that 2-week trip, I was also down in Orlando for 4 days. I drove down to Orlando, did a conference for 2 days, and then came back. So I've been on the road most of February. I was presenting at a conference. I was finding a new home in our new state where we'll be moving in just a couple of months. And honestly, if it were not for my virtual assistants and the people that I outsource to, none of that would have been possible. One of them reformatted my presentation at the last minute for the conference that I was keynoting at. Another person was delivering things on my behalf while I was sitting in conferences all day and while I was house hunting. And so it only made me appreciate the power of a virtual team even more, because there are certain things that I simply could not do, particularly when I'm on the road and I'm not attached to Wi-Fi very easily, or I'm driving and literally cannot do work. So having a team of VAs has just made things so much easier for me, because I'll need help with a broad range of things. You know, we had a couple of exciting things going on as I was on these trips. I'm launching an online summit this week that we had to have everything ready to go for. And I had an article come out in Business Insider during the same time. So promotions and creation of things still needed to happen even when I'm on the road. But let's get right to this week's question, which is, are there certain things you should not outsource to a virtual assistant? There's a lot of myths out there about things that you shouldn't give away in your business. You shouldn't pass on to another person. And the answer is, unfortunately, it depends. So some people will be comfortable over time giving access to their payment information like PayPal or their invoicing software to a virtual assistant that they trust. Other people may never get to that point of feeling comfortable, or it may not be worth the hassle to train somebody else when they could pretty easily do it themselves. If it's not a huge time hindrance, that's something a lot of people prefer to keep to themselves. The main thing that you have to continue doing yourself are things that only you can do. So what does that mean? Well, for me, if I'm a guest on someone else's podcast, no one on my team can go do that. I can't have someone on my team host my own podcast because it's supposed to be me and my voice, right? So there's certain things that I will always need to do in my business. And you'll hear mixed answers about people as far as blogging and email marketing and things like that. I always email my list directly. I write my blogs like 90% of the time. Occasionally we do have guest posters, but it's usually done by me because it's very important that it's my voice and that it's my experience that's being translated to the crowd. So you'll find mixed answers on that. You can outsource writing. So let's get back to this idea of, for example, podcasting. You might think, okay, if you're running a podcast or being on podcast, that's something you 100% have to do yourself. You can't outsource it. That's not true. So the only aspects of my podcast that I'm responsible for are approving guests and showing up to record the show itself. So all those other aspects of editing the audio, coming up with the social media graphics, reminding the guests to send the right information before they show up on the show, and scheduling everything through Libsyn, that's all done by somebody else, by 2 different people on my team. So are there things that you shouldn't outsource? Absolutely, right? Like, I need to be the one on the podcast conducting the interviews. However, there's many other tasks within that broad umbrella of podcasting that can be handled by somebody else. I would say that the 2, as I've mentioned, that people are most uncomfortable with sharing responsibility are writing and are handling financial stuff. Other than that, people tend to get pretty comfortable with outsourcing to others. You can always choose what you're comfortable with. You can use tools like LastPass. You can use a prepaid debit card to whatever your assistant's responsible for buying, if it's like gifts for somebody else. You can use a prepaid debit card for those types of things. It takes time to really build confidence in someone that you've never met before, but most people are going to question whether it's right to outsource writing because it requires a deep understanding of their voice and financial activities. Now, writing you can outsource. I've been a ghostwriter for 5 years, so obviously people do use ghostwriting services. It's really up to you. Even though I'm a ghostwriter, I'm writing all the content for Better Biz Academy and for Six Figure Writing Secrets, because that's something that I feel is important to me. So because of that, I'm choosing the decision to keep that on my plate, but I have to outsource other things in my business, such as most of the podcasting tasks, so that I'm able to have the time to do the one thing that I thought was most important, which was the writing. So are there certain things you should not outsource to a VA? It really depends on what you're comfortable with and what you need the most help with. Some things will be more difficult to outsource than others. It can be hard to find a writer who writes in your specific voice. It can be hard to find somebody you trust with financial transactions. But it's really all about the relationship you build with that person and whether or not it's helpful for you to outsource that activity.